Hello and welcome to Talking Conservation,
the podcast all about conservation of old, traditional and historic buildings and sites.
with me, Rich Aylesbury.
And me, Stephen Boniface.
Right, Ben, so we're here in your domain. This is where the magic happens. Talk us through the setup you've got here and what the kind of courses that you run and what you use each bit for, because I think that'd be really interesting.
Well, it's nice that we've got such a big space to work in, but you can see we've got our pointing bays, so we've got 8 pointing bays that we have people learning to point on both brick but also stone, because often they want to try both. And
with the pointing courses then, I mean, for example, how long is a pointing course, or is there such a thing, or do they all differ and vary?
Well, we have our pointing courses are for a day, and generally they get a good chance to get everything they need to do. It dries, they can finish it off and see what the finish is going to be like, kind of do some colour matching, see the different porosity of substrates. So obviously some substrates are going to dry a lot quicker, so we can see how that works and how they can time their jobs so that they can get a good finish and get the kind of the window for finishing the material kind of right, basically. So we've got some nice space for them to use the
And I guess
pointing bays.
at the end of the day, when everyone's done the pointing, is it then heartbreaking for you to come along and scratch it all out?
Yeah, I think at first I'd let them go home and then I'd stay after and rake it all out, but I got sick of that staying for so long. So it's part of the process, learning how to rake out, but we look at kind of raking out some cement and how much harder that is. But yeah, I do get them to
destroy
rake
their hard work.
Sometimes they swap and destroy somebody else's. So I've got to make sure they've taken pictures, because if I suddenly start raking it out, I have been told off before and had to repair before a picture was taken. Yeah,
bro. And then the bays behind, so what are those then used for?
We've got our plastering bays, so you can see we've had a few different finishes. Like here, everyone tries to do an internal corner, rounded corner. We've got ceilings if we need to, if people want to have a go with ceilings, but some different types of skim that we've been finishing with. I really actually been loving using clay and putting clay into the skims, because it really makes it more breathable, but also it's so nice to use.
So what's that on there that we're looking at?
There is a layer of Kime paint on that from yesterday. We had a CPD with Kime. But we've got basically a putty skim, a putty and clay. We've got chalk mixes, just to see. There's different thicknesses you can do with skims, just depending on kind of if they've done a kind of a fairly fresh wall that's tidy. We can do quite a tight skim. Looking at the breathability they want, or the absorbency really of their walls, they could be looking at trying to achieve. But also thicker skims if you're repairing kind of some damaged plaster that needs to go a bit thicker, basically. So it's just looking at those and what really people get on with. So some people, we look at a few different systems, and some people mix and match, like their base coat, top coat skims. They might vary slightly with materials, thicknesses, just what they prefer to use, really. So we try and give people a bit of an option.
Yeah, so it's not a kind of one-trick pony in terms of you come here, you learn this. It's more a case of here's all the different things you can do, see what works for you, and also what works for your substrate.
I think that's what we found with working with both time-served tradespeople that've got a certain technique and way of working. They better on the trowels. To people that never picked up hawk and trowel before, might need a system that kind of is a bit kind of less needed higher trowel skills. So, but it just works really well. And the longer we've been teaching, the kind of more we've kind of realised that we do need to kind of people learn in different ways. But people have it may be that somebody's got a particularly weak wrist or something, or so we have got options of different materials that work nicer, easier to use, and what people are trying to achieve in performance as well.
And so with the number of bays here, generally course size, I mean, and In terms of, is it you teaching here with others that support? And do you know how many students do you generally take on per course?
Well, with pointing we have 8, and plastering we've got 9 bays, so anywhere between 8 and 9. And I think that's a good number with just me teaching, because any more than that I can't really get around and kind of give people the attention they need and kind of go through the different methods. So that's a really nice number.
Right, Ben, I can't help but make a quip about, is this where you wash yourself each day? I mean,
no, you might guess that from the look of me, but no, this is, I slake our lime here, so this is basically our lime pit, so make lime fresh for the courses, so we do get through quite a lot of it. We've been experimenting actually making kind of putties, but also kind of showing people that hydrated lime is the same sort of thing, and we can make hydrated lime as well, although it's definitely a messier process, so we prefer to make a putty. But it's just good education for people to see what materials come out of quicklime.
And then panning round, you were saying that, I do love that, one size doesn't fit all. That's such a great quote. And it's just really absolutely what you're going on about here, isn't it? Let's get the understanding of the building, understanding of the materials, and then make a decision off the back of that, rather than just, oh, the answer is this. So yeah, but what happens up there above that sign then?
So we've got our classroom up there. So we start generally every day in the classroom for hopefully not more than an hour, just to go through some of the what mixes we're going to be making, some building physics, how an old building needs to work, what not to do, and some of the kind of case studies of repair work that we've done. Because again, I've been really lucky in the work that I've done. It's been fixing damp problems. So being able to take a building apart and see kind of what's gone on in the past and what's going wrong has led to kind of a really good learning for me. So I can really understand how we need to kind of get these buildings working well and sort out any damp issues.
And then as we pan around here, we've got a big rack of lots of different materials with all sorts of wacky names on them. Is this all the stuff that goes into what you make then?
Generally, yeah. I mean, we've got more stuff as well, but in some of the storerooms. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with the new rack, and I'm loving the forklift. I'm still not quite the best driver, but yeah, Kate's been playing on it as well. But yeah, we've got our different sands that we're using, anywhere from a clean washed sand, a modern take, even to we get a really good local pit sand, which is just a sand dug out of the ground, unwashed. It has about 20% clay, so we kind of base that for some of our clay plasters and some of our kind of more historic mixes, which I really love. And it's a beautiful colour as well, really kind of nice orange colours. We've got our hemp shiv as an aggregate, potentially insulating aggregate. Perlite, we've been playing with aerogels as well, kind of mixing different levels of that in to increase the performance. Different clays that we're using for our skims and for our clay plasters. Our cowbucks, so we've been selling all these materials as well, mostly just to the students, so it's a bit easier for them to source things because we've only got small amounts.
Yeah, so you can buy a bag at a time. I mean, I don't know from personal experience, actually, quite often it's the transport costs, isn't it? That you almost have to buy it by the pallet to make it worthwhile. And of course, if you've got a couple of walls to skim, it's just an absolute nightmare. So yeah, buying a bag at a time is pretty handy, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So we've got our heat-proof buckets as well, so they can sort of safely slake small amounts when they need it, which can be kind of good money saving. We also stock some of the best of lime materials, and I quite like to show people, especially with the lath work we do, because on part 2 we do a lot of lath work. I mean, just looking at what Martin's created with the best of lime stuff is very it's based on a historic recipe. We see it a lot around the Forest of Dean as well. I've got it's pretty much in my house, so not using these heavy sand aggregates, but using kind of lightweight stone dusts, highly flexible, highly breathable, very sticky, so work really nicely with lath, but also on solid walls as well. And we see a lot of renders externally in a similar material around here. So yeah, we've got quite a good range of materials for people to try and to take away. We've got some hydrated lime, even from the builders merchants, so people can experiment with that as well and see the difference.
Cool. Thanks, Ben. So Ben, I'm dying to ask then, you've obviously got lots of bays. At what point does it come to when there's no space in the bays because you've got that many layers of plaster?
Yeah, you can see the kind of the curve on this bay has actually got quite big, and there is a 4-inch block wall in there somewhere.
Oh right, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, it's nearly time where we need to hack off, and then I can speak to the farmer to. So he's got some material to fill his gateways with,
right.
which is quite good. Or I really want to start reusing it, but anyway, but yeah, it's quite interesting to see what thickness material and the weight that you can sit on different types of key. It's some of these slabs that come off might be 150 kilos that are sitting on just quite a small key. So you can see how effective some of these different keys are kind of holding a lot of weight.
Yeah, especially when that, like you say, there's a 4-inch concrete block under there, which is in actually that plaster isn't going anywhere, and you're saying that you have to hack it off. It doesn't just fall off on a big slab.
No, definitely, especially when you undermine it as well, and it's not sitting on the floor, and it's just the weight hanging off the wall.
Yeah.
So I've been able to learn a lot, taking these down, a lot about kind of how well it sticks, what sort of weight a key can carry, and the different types of lime, how well they hold, basically, and their strength of adhesion.
So you've been able to experiment with, I guess, the thickness of coats, have you, with insulating limes and various things like that?
Yeah, definitely. It's been good that we've been with the insulating limes, that we kind of make our own mixes. There's a few different materials that we use, but you can really go as thick as you want with a decent amount of fibre as well. We've been going extremely thick with coats. Really, we want to be keeping them at around kind of no more than 30 mil because they're easier to rule and flatten off. But you can really go indefinitely thick without any shrinkage and sagging, which is really good for a lot of the trades that are wanting to go in and do a quote that's competitive, and not just doing these consecutive very thin coats day or week after week, where you can just go in and do a really thick coat to fill out what you need, just to keep costs down for the client. But yeah, it's really effective. So we've got a few, we did have a challenge that I set for one of our lady plasterer that came on, and I said that I'd gone about 4 inches thick in one go. So she took that as a challenge, and she actually went, as you can see from her gargoyle that she created, 7.5 inches thick in one go, without any cracking, without any shrinkage, but also without any key.
Whoa.
So straight onto a flat wall without any key. So it's really amazing what you can do, and what we can experiment with as well to see. I mean, you probably wouldn't do that in.
Yeah, but that's quite remarkable that didn't slump or didn't sort of sag down or things. I mean, that's quite some skill to get the right consistency, I would assume.
Definitely, there's a real the stickiness of a mix really aids to the kind of adhesion, but how it holds itself together. So we can really kind of making our own mixes, we can really fine tune that for the job in hand. So we've got kind of, that was a bit of a perlite mix. She also did a hemp, so just hemp and lime. Hemp as the aggregate. So basically the foamy internal part of the cannabis plant, and then turned it into an oak leaf as well. Really cool. So that's kind of 3 inches thick in one go. So we've really been experimenting with mixes that we might be using less sands, because sand is a really kind of energy intensive process, where the washing process is really energy intensive. So if you can use something that is kind of more sustainable, there's less embodied energy, also increases breathability, because our modern sands aren't really breathable, can really aid to the performance of the building.
And I guess that's the advantage of coming on such as this. You can just have a bit of a play, have an experiment. You've got all the materials here. I mean, I noticed big racks at the back of lots of different materials, and people can just see how it goes. Is that the idea? Yeah,
I think our plastering course is, the full course is 4 days. We do split that into a part 1 and part 2. Part 1's a bit more prescriptive, where we look at kind of more of the modern materials, as in the modern materials of the sand-based mixes, so people can get a good idea of what they're doing. I think the sand-based mixes can potentially be a bit easier to use to get a better finish. And then we start looking at the kind of more historically accurate mixes where we're not using so much sand. There's kind of stone dusts, clays, even industrial ashes that were used historically. And it does take a little bit more trowel skills, but we can really start to push the boundaries of what you expect you can do with thicknesses, extra breathability, absorbency, because these aggregates are actually breathable and absorbent. They really increase the performance of a plaster if you need it to be highly absorbent and breathable, which is going to stop surface condensation, or in certain wall makeups can be really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think I like the idea of just going back on through the history books, I suppose, and analysing the local stuff around here. We're in the Forest of Dean here, and therefore there is a certain amount of buildings that are very particularly old. And I know you were saying you've studied local here, but also further afield with regard to actually what were historic plasters made of. And we were discussing earlier that actually sand wasn't really a feature. Was that right? Or?
Absolutely, yeah. It's actually very rare. From working in kind of around Northamptonshire, Wales, southwest Wales, and now kind of around Gloucestershire, it's extremely rare, if not ever, to see a clean washed sand. It's always, if the sand is either mixed with some clay, but much more than that, either pure clay with a small amount of lime.
Not the sort of stuff that you generally find at your builders merchants, though.
Exactly.
When you want some building work done, he's sort of saying, "Oh, 2 bags of sand, please, mate, and a bag of lime type thing. Chuck it in. There you go. There's your lime plaster." And what we're saying now is, well, actually, that may not be the best option.
No, this is. I mean, it's very modern, really, a modern take. What the materials we're using is a modern take on lime. Definitely with the aggregates, these clean washed sands, but definitely on the types of lime as well. It's a much more modern take than what we had historically. And once you start to look at what was in these buildings, which I've been very fortunate to be looking at buildings sort of all around the country, that's what I'm kind of looking to recreate.
No, brilliant. Thanks, Ben.
You've been listening to Talking Conservation,
The podcast all about conservation of old, traditional and historic buildings and sites.
with me, Stephen Boniface.
And me, Rich Aylesbury.